Former Foreign Ministry legal advisor Alan Baker discussed the legal status of the Palestinians' UNSC resolution with IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan, as well as his assessment of who's coming out the winner in the statehood bid.
Legally, it's very interesting because according to the Oslo Accords, which are still valid, they're still in force, the Palestinians are committed not to do anything to change the status of the territories pending the outcome of permanent status negotiations. Now, one can claim that by going to the Security Council in order to bypass the negotiating process, they're basically trying to alter the status of the territories and to represent themselves as a state. As such, they're committing a basic violation of the Oslo Accords, which in turn, legally speaking and theoretically, would enable Israel to view the Accords as void and to carry out its own unilateral actions. Now, this, of course, is all theoretical because Israel and the Palestinians haven't yet determined that the Oslo Accords are no longer valid. In fact, they've both maintained continued validity of the Accords.
So what's the purpose of a threat like this?
Well, it's a threat that if Israel decides on the basis of some type of new Security Council resolution, which probably won't happen, but if it were to happen, and if it were indeed to change the game rules, it would be a game changer. It would undermine 242. It would undermine the fact that the Europeans and the UN are all basically signatories to the Oslo Accords as witnesses and as guarantors. The UN endorsed the Oslo Accords. So adopting a new resolution which basically removes the accepted resolutions 242 and 338 for calling for negotiations, etc., by removing that, you're basically removing the basis of the Oslo Accords. And so there's something in what he says, theoretically again, whether ultimately there'll be a change is highly doubtful, and whether ultimately the government of Israel will decide to, or the new government of Israel or whatever, to declare the Oslo Accords no longer valid and therefore carry out its own unilateral actions, including removing the Palestinian Authority. Again, it's academic, it's theoretical. I doubt very much whether it could happen, and I doubt very much whether it's in the interest of Israel or the Palestinians to allow this to happen, because it would create a huge vacuum. If the Oslo Accords don't exist, then the Palestinian Authority loses its basic legal right to exist. The president of the Palestinian Authority, the Rais, no longer has his job, and so there's a vacuum. And of course we know who wants to come into this vacuum, that organization that's no longer considered by the Europeans as a terrorist organization, Hamas.
You say it's highly doubtful that the UN Security Council will accept this?
Well, as far as we understand, the Americans are going to veto the Palestinian draft. Whether there'll be another draft submitted by the French or by the Jordanians, which the Americans won't veto, and if this draft gets the required majority, then the question will be whether it would be a game changer or not. Okay. I think the aim of the French is to produce language that wouldn't change the basic requirements of negotiation, but would create some type of framework or target date for completing negotiations. And this wouldn't necessarily undermine or change the existing Security Council resolution.
If this passes through the UN, who are the winners and who are the losers?
I think both sides will probably lose, because Israel will treat this as a violation of the process, and the Palestinians will treat this as a victory and an approval of their new status, and neither of these things will contribute to ultimate need to get down to negotiate, because even if there is a declaration of a Palestinian state, and even if the whole world were to accept this, including Israel possibly, there'd still be a need to negotiate borders. You know, it takes two to tango. It takes two sides of the border to negotiate the border. There are issues such as water, security, refugees, settlements. All these are issues that can't be dictated by the United Nations or by the Irish Parliament or by the French Parliament or the Spanish Parliament. You know, it's all wishful thinking on their part.
Political commentator Gil Troy told IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan that he was shocked by the EU's removal of Hamas as a terror group and that he places part of the blame for the decision on Israel's prime minister.
I'm rarely surprised, but when I see in this day and age, and I see in a week when over 100 children are slaughtered in Pakistan, when downtown Sydney is frozen by a terrorist, that the European Union can, on a technicality, in its judicial arm, somehow decide that Hamas is not a terrorist organization, I'm speechless.